And so I want to first thank you guys both for joining me today in what is my final podcast for the series, Embracing Age and Wisdom. And I brought you two together to share your expertise on the subject of living stronger and longer. But before we start, I want both of you or each of you rather, to go ahead and give me again a brief background on your health journey. I know we've talked about it before in conversation. Kevin and I have recorded it in our conversations, but just a brief orientation, because I think it's really important for the listeners, both for your listeners as well as mine, to just hear that background. Where does that come from? What was the spark in you, and what continues to drive you? So let's start with Kevin.
Okay. My health journey started when I was probably 5 years old, I would say. I just got to the point where I was obviously able to walk at 5 years old, but I started to become very aware and hyper aware of the world and the universe at a very young age. And it started with looking at my grandparents, and then it kind of went downhill from there, from my grandparents to my parents. And I remember having to go to the hospital multiple times with my mom and my grandmother and my grandfather for my grandmother to get different tests done on her body because she had issues with her gut. And her main problem was diverticulitis. And my grandparents were 100% pureblood Italian. And later in life, just recently actually, I found out that diverticulitis is actually a condition that mainly afflicts Italians for some reason. And maybe it's because they have a diet that's high in pasta and bread and potatoes and all this stuff. And I'm not profiling, I'm just being honest. I'm half Italian, so why would I profile myself? I'm just throwing it out there. I am as straight shooter as they come, and I tell it like it is. But anyway, I noticed that, and I was scared to death of hospitals. I was scared to death of doctors, and I watched my grandparents take medications for high blood pressure, for high cholesterol. My grandmother couldn't eat certain things because of diverticulitis, and I'm like, well, I love peanut butter, and I love nuts, and I love seeds, and I like chocolate cake, and I like icing, and I like this. I'm like, I want to eat all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, I also don't want to be sick, and I don't want to go to a doctor. I don't want to go to a hospital. I don't like the smell of doctors or hospitals or doctors' offices or anything like that. And I'm like, I need to start doing something. And literally by the time I was in 6th grade, I stopped using a salt shaker because I associated high blood pressure with high intake of salt, although that's not necessarily the truth. And as we know now, high blood pressure is caused by unforeseen circumstances. It's just that if you have a high sodium diet, it accelerates the process and it makes it worse. And I started connecting all these dots at a young age, and health and fitness just started sticking with me. And I'm like, well, I do know this. Exercise is beneficial for health, and it helps lower blood pressure. It helps keep you thinner and not fat. And I used the word fat a lot when I was growing up, and I'm like, I don't want to be fat. I can't be fat. I didn't want to disgrace my dad. My dad was in the military. He was an Army guy, and he was very strict when I was growing up. So all these things start happening at a very young age for me. And then when I got into high school, my dad got diagnosed with colon cancer. And that's when the switches really started flipping for me. And then I started looking back at his life, and I'm like, what did he do to put him in this position? He's in such good shape. He was in the Carpenters Union. He was a drywall installer. He looked fit, and he was muscular, and he was always working at home and doing all these things. However, he was highly stressed. He chewed Red Man tobacco from the time he got up in the morning till the time he went to bed at night, and he always had a big hunk in his mouth, and he had this spittoon can in the truck, which was disgusting. And I'd go to church with him and stuff on Sunday mornings. He'd be sitting there chewing, and I'd be like, oh, it's gross. Anyway, chewed tobacco like it was going out of style. He had 2 to 3 beers a night, 7 days a week, except on holidays when we got together with my family members. Then he would have a ton of alcohol, and it never even fazed him. I never even saw my dad buzzed, and he would drink we'd go to parties, and he would just drink all day. And I didn't even see him buzzed. And I'm like, well, how do you get to that point? I didn't know as a young kid that you build up a tolerance to alcohol. And he was in the military. And, back in the old days in the military, they would get passes and stuff, and they'd drink themselves to oblivion on weekends. And I'm like, now when I look back at it, and even when I was 19, 20 years old, I look back at my dad's life. I'm like, he grew an immunity to alcohol. And I'm like, well, no wonder he ended up dying at 52 years old from colon cancer, because he chewed Red Man tobacco all day. He drank like it was going out of style. He was highly stressed. His diet was meat and potatoes and processed food, lots of sodium, lots of salt. We had a garden. We had 3 gardens in the back of our house growing up, big ones. And he'd be out there dusting the crops with 7 dust. And then he'd be spraying the fruit trees with all this garbage. And me and my brother weren't even allowed to go outside and play when he was doing this. He would say after dinner, I don't want you guys going outside tonight. I have to dust the crops. And I'm like, okay. So I look out the the window in the back of our house, and he'd have this rubber suit on from head to toe and goggles. And he had a spray can in one hand and a brown bag in the other. And he'd go down the aisles of the garden going like this with this cheesecloth, and dust would be coming out, white dust. It was Sevin dust. And he was using like Roundup, spraying the trees with Roundup, spraying the ground with Roundup, using Sevin dust on the crops. And then all this stuff would grow months later, and they'd be pulling it out of the ground, my parents, and they'd serve it to us. And I'd sit there at the table like with my mouth closed. I'm like, I'm not eating that crap. I'm like, I wasn't allowed to go out and play, and you want me to eat this stuff? And it like clicked in my brain that chemicals and preservatives in food was not the best way to go. And then after he passed away from cancer, I was 19 years old. I saw him take his last breath. That was it for me. That was when my journey really began, and my learning curve really began. And I said, I don't want to end up like him. I don't want to be dead early. I don't want to get cancer. If I do get it, I want to have a fighting chance to beat it. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I take ownership for my health right now and I start making some changes. And that's when my big journey into health and wellness really kicked into full gear. And I was like, I need to do exactly what he didn't do the opposite of what he did. And then I want other people to follow my lead, and I want to inspire as many people as I can not to go down the same road he did or the same path, because he basically just shriveled up to 105 pounds laying in a hospital bed, and I saw him take his last breath. And that was the end for me. I'm like, that's it. This is my life. This is my passion from now on. There's my story.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I've known the story before, Kevin, and you've shared it with me before, and it's pretty intense. And you know, I don't know if I told you, Kev, I suffer from diverticulitis, and as a matter of fact, I've lost 19 inches of my colon due to.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I don't
when
know
I
if I knew
first.
that. Yeah.
Well, it was when I think I met you after I had my surgery, because I moved here in 2012, and it was toward closing in on 2013 when I was just letting Ruth know, I feel like I got a fever. Maybe we should just go to the clinic. And luckily, the clinic was closed, so we had to go to the emergency room. When I got there, the doctor took one look at me. He goes, I want to do an X-ray here of your of your midsection there. And he did. And he goes, your colon burst. And so I was leaking.
Wow.
I was leaking into my. They immediately admitted me, and basically they wanted to jump right in and take care of it. And I said, well, give me the pros and cons. They said, well, if we do that, it's probably going to be septic. We're going to have to clean you out. You're going to be wearing a colostomy bag for a period or whatever. And I said, well, what's the other alternative? Well, we can try to do it with, we can try to, it'll eventually slow down if we don't feed you anything, and it'll heal itself. But in the meantime, you've got to get rid of all the toxins. So they threw me on antibiotics while I was up at Park City Hospital. And I was in there for 7 days. Went from almost 190 pounds down to 135 pounds, because I was, yes, wow. It was a week of not eating. And I remember, and they was doing all these different cocktails of antibiotics. And I remember one day sitting there and all of a sudden feeling extremely light and lightheaded, and kind of literally seeing the light. And the next day they said, it seems like we're getting this under control. And it wasn't until the very end, because they didn't want to tell me, they said, we almost lost you on Wednesday. And that was the day. Yeah. So I know how bad diverticulitis can be. And so it's something and I wasn't aware of it either, Kev, until that time. I was always on a health journey, but not to the extent of what that particular issue caused. Mm-hmm. So anyway, to continue on, John, I know a little bit of John's background. John was a student of mine. We worked at UNLV together on several plays. He was an actor, just like Kevin is an actor as well. Nice. But yeah, let's hear your journey.
Mine started from a very young age as well, but I wasn't aware of it at a young age like Kevin was. I grew up in sort of a standard American household. My very medical based. My father is a pharmacist. My mother was a school nurse. And both of them were also ordained ministers. So there's all this faith in God. There's all this faith in medicine. And it sort of unintentionally took this turn of, in their own lives, them sort of pseudo believing that, well, I don't need to do anything. I have my faith, I have my medicine, right? If anything goes wrong, I can take care of it that way. And that's really all we need to do. So we ate all the processed foods. Food combinations were bad, food timing was bad, food amounts were bad. And no one was there saying, hey, this is what we need to limit. This is how we need to craft this. This is the movement that we need in a day. Like that, those discussions just never happened. These are the things that we do to maintain our health. It was a reliance on those two systems of help me when there's a problem. And so when I met Steve, I was a young man. I was probably 19 or 20, I think, at that time. And I was very overweight. I was weak. I didn't have much physical ability at all. And I was like, I got into actor training. They were like, hey, you need more use of your body. First of all, you don't really look like a leading man. So you might want to do something about that. You need to start working out. Second of all, you need to kind of figure out the diet thing and lose a little weight. And then you need to take movement more seriously so you have more use of your instrument. And that was when it really began. And then I go, okay, wow, I need to do some things here in order to create health. It's not just I let it go until it falls apart. And from there, it's been the last 25 years, 26 years have then moved it into chunks. I as first was trying to be healthy for an actor's career sake. And then I found my love of chiropractic. And so I kind of realized that, oh my gosh, we have everything in us to be healthy. All we need to do is nothing in the way of it. And so that really began to shift my thinking. And then I had children, and I said, oh, wow, now I have to model all this behavior. I really haven't been doing it as well as I thought I was. And so it keeps progressing into these more and more detail oriented patterns, and where it's ended up now is I am a chiropractor. I practice here in Austin, Texas. And a big part of my practice, I say it's twofold. One, I certainly have to care for your spine and your nervous system, but my other job is to teach you the things that you need to know so that you can do the things you need to do in order to create and maintain health for the lifespan of your body, right? What you were given genetically speaking. So that's how I've arrived here.
Right, right.
Very cool.
John, just to add a corollary in there, because it kind of folds into what I'm going to bring up in a minute. But because you worked in a program, the program, Kevin, that John and I were in at UNLV, it was program run by Michael Lugerin, and he had a whole movement-based concept for acting. And I know you got involved in that, but then you kind of really took off in that. How did specifically that training orient you and kind of direct you to where you are today? Because I remember how affected you were by that training.
Yeah. Michael really introduced me to this concept of optimal functioning. And that's really what he was seeking. He was like, I want your body to have the ability to do everything that a human body should and could do under normal circumstances. And when I started to lean into that and I saw the change and I could feel the difference in my body, I really knew that that was a way that I could not only approach my acting, but my living. And that took me into a yoga practice, right? So my next
Oh,
phase was I got certified to teach yoga. I was living in Santa Monica at the time, and I really dove into the art, science, and philosophy of yoga and started realizing that we need to craft our behaviors to support the optimal. And then that took me into chiropractic, which is just an extension of that, basically, in more specific and more modern scientific terms, but saying the same things. We have this ability for optimal functioning. If we will just follow the genetic blueprint and give the possibility for optimal functioning to happen, then it will. It has to. That's what the programming is. And I really do think that when Michael instilled that in me in terms of acting, right, it shifted my whole paradigm. And suddenly I was looking at the world through a whole new set of lenses.
Right. I mean, I know how much it affected you, and it's really cool because it brought you onto a pretty cool path.
Yeah. Yeah. It did.
So I just want to, by the way, I'm going to be reading some of this stuff because I don't want to miss what I've learned from a recent book I read, which is kind of going to orient us into our discussion today. But just going back for me, my focus for a good part of 40 years has been health and fitness. And it just started when I was in college in 1970s as a runner. And it was running when running was not a thing that you would do for your health. I then broadened my health journey into strength training, always with that focus of becoming as fit as possible. And Kevin can relate to this because he's one of the fittest men I know. And now in my 70s, and I think we're representing here the 40s, a person in their 40s, their 50s, and now I'm just into my 70s now. My focus still remains living as fit as possible, but with the added focus of extending my health span. And that kind of brought all of us together, is really that living stronger, healthier, and longer. And it's not just about adding years to our lives, but about adding life to our years, if you think about it. So how do we stay vibrant is the question. How do we stay purposeful, mentally sharp as we age? And my research that I've done, I've come up with some figures. 70% of how we age is determined by lifestyle and genetics. We, as you've just said, John and Kevin, you know as well, that we have agency over our health. And for decades, our previous generations, they never thought about it. They went to the doctor once a year, if that, and that's where healthcare came in for them. And it wasn't them, our parents and grandparents taking care of themselves per se. And now we know we have that ability to do that. Exercise, nutrition, sleep, social connection all play powerful roles in how we age and feel at 70. At 50, 60, 70, and 80 and beyond. And so it's really empowering that we have that agency over aging. So as I mentioned to John prior to you coming on, Kev, I found this book and I recommend it to everyone. It's called Stronger by Michael Joseph Gross. And the book is like a very broad, wide-ranging exploration of muscle. Now, not just as a bodybuilding aesthetic, but as the key part of human life, of health, of identity and history. It's really, really interesting. Stronger is the name of the book. It goes beyond how strength and muscle and weight training have been understood or misunderstood across generations. And it reconsiders how we should think about muscle and its role in our lives. So muscle, obviously, we know is one of the major tissues. About 30 to 40% of our muscle mass is going to be made up of muscle. And it functions metabolically, structurally, in agency. Again, our ability to act, right? It's all in regards to muscle. Gross argues that muscle is ultimately connected with independence, autonomy, and our capacity to act in the world. And like John, as I said, your health journey sprang from exercise and experience with training in movement, which is obviously led by muscle. So Gross covers how resistance and weight training yields health benefits beyond muscle size. So better bone density is going to be helpful, reduces falling when you're older, improvements in just general health. And that's what's really, really important as we age. And Stronger makes a case that muscle is far more than just cosmetic. It's fundamental to how we live, move, and age. And so I just found it to be a fascinating cover, story rather, of a different angle on health and longevity. And so with that orientation, I just want to have us just talk and get your input on that subject, or the general subject of living stronger and longer, and your opinions about muscle and how muscle plays a part in your thinking, in your practice for health and longevity. And we can start with Kevin. Kevin and I came up with a plan we call the 10 Commandments of Extending Your Health Span, which I've mentioned. It's move, eat, fast, sleep, hydrate, breathe, think, connect, meditate, and avoid. And they're the 10 pillars of extending your health span. But I just want to let's just talk a little bit about what your opinion is of what I just mentioned in Gross's book, and just in general, living stronger, longer, and extending our health span. So we'll start maybe with Kevin. We'll start with you. And we can make this a discussion. So, whatever you want to bring up, and what's your opinion of this idea of muscle being so critical?
Well, muscle is probably the most, I guess I would call it an organ in the body, most important. I think skin and muscle are the two most important parts of the body, which skin gets overlooked all the time. I actually have a short video I recorded, I'm going to be releasing over the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that, on the importance of skin. Not necessarily the importance, but how you can boost skin health. But let's revert back to muscle. Without strong skin, you're not going to be able to keep your muscle in any kind of great resemblance of in good shape anyway. I think there's a fine line between the influencers out there making too much of a big deal out of muscle, and then people not making enough of a big deal about muscle. The sweet spot is this. You absolutely need balance. You need brain function. You need to regulate your blood sugar levels. And you need to be able to function optimally with daily tasks as you age, especially as you age. But I would say balance is probably the most important one, and that's another factor that gets overlooked and thrown under the bus most of the time when it comes to people talking smack about overall health. Without muscle, you cannot do any of those things. You can't go to the mailbox. You can't pick up your grandchildren. You can't pick up your children. You can't put groceries in and out of a car. You can't walk upstairs while holding bags on your sides or holding a backpack on your shoulder with tact and with confidence without muscle. So it is quintessentially important for everyone out there, not just if you're 40 plus or 50 plus, but all ages, but especially as you get older, because as we know, I'm not a big fan of everyone who does fear-mongering in relation to once you're 30 years old, life starts to end. Oh, your testosterone goes down and you're done, you're finished. You got to start taking this and this and this. What you have to do is stop listening to the idiots out there and take ownership for your own health and block everything else out. And say to yourself, am I functioning optimally? Or do I have aches and pains? Is my back hurting? Is there creaking going on in my knees? Am I able to do things? Am I able to stack wood efficiently and shove it into the fireplace in the winter at a second's notice? Can I get out of bed in the morning without having to hobble around for 5 minutes before I get my balance or anything like that? And if the answer to those questions is yes to any of them, then you need to start working on more muscle mass. And yeah, it is true. We age. We all three of us have just aged 30 minutes later than when we started with this call a minute ago.
Right.
Every single second you're aging and aging and aging. But there's 1,000 things we can do to slow it, to stop it, to try to reverse it. And I don't know if we have actual physical proof that we can reverse the aging process right now, but what we can do is, like we talked about before, Steve, one of our motivators personally is we want to stay in as good a shape as we can, as long as we can. And for me, muscle is quintessentially important. It's a quintessentially important aspect of all of that. And for me, it doesn't just give me more confidence to do all those things I just talked about, but I'm a huge outdoorsman. And you asked me about my hike before. I want to be able to do hikes with weighted backpacks on, with sometimes carrying my girlfriend on my back through mud if I have to, or carrying her stuff because it becomes too heavy for her. I want to be able to put that stuff in my backpack and say, bring it on, and not have any worries about it forever until I'm 90 plus, till I'm 100 years old. I want to be able to do that. And in order to make that happen, I need to stay strong. I need to stay upright. I need to have good balance. I need to have good flexibility. So what forms the centerpiece of all my workouts is I call them my beefcake workouts. But my beefcake workouts are not doing 400-pound deadlifts and 1.5 times my body weight bench press and all these parameters and metrics that all these experts and all these doctors are trying to shove down everybody's throats all the time. That's all complete nonsense. You can get all you need from body weight exercises and smart training and things like TRXs and kettlebells and dumbbells and free weights. And you don't need 1,000,000 pounds. Moderate weights is best. So it's absolutely important to make sure that you have maintained muscle mass. And one of the big things I think you mentioned it, I might have mentioned it, that I love about muscle mass is the fact that it does absorb glucose, and it does help reduce the risk of diabetes and hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, and all these horrible conditions that are related to blood sugar. I've done a lot of videos on that lately because I'm fired up about it. I talk about ways to make meals less spiking of blood sugar. I've been talking about how to utilize exercise and fasting to help reduce your blood sugar levels and everything. People should take big interest in blood sugar levels. And muscles, when you're doing workouts and you're doing high intensity workouts especially, they just absolutely suck up the glycogen, which is magnificent. It's beautiful. And if you go into your workouts in a fasted state, that effect is going to be quadrupled, if not an exponent of 10 next to it, as opposed to a fed state. So I'm big on working out in a fasted state. And when you work out in a fasted state, minimum of 12 hours, your human growth hormone levels are higher and your insulin is low. That makes a perfect environment for really soaking up the glucose and boosting your fat burning too during your workouts and afterward. You become fat adapted, and because HGH is higher, you're able to maintain and build lean muscle mass, and that's the quintessential thing. And when you have more muscle, it raises your metabolic rate as well. And if you do high intensity interval workouts or high intensity workouts in general in a fasted state, that amount of fat you're going to be burning in the 24 to 48 hour period after your workouts is going to be even greater. And that spells longevity. That's the best I can tell you right now. So all of you people listening at home, that's what you should aspire to do. Don't get too fancy with like, oh, you have to lift 1.5 times your body weight in deadlift and chest press and grip strength and blah, 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 or else you're going to die. No, don't listen to those people that say that nonsense. I'm not going to name their names, but they are synonymous out there. What you need to do is focus on targeting all your major muscle groups. Choose exercises you like. That's important, because if you don't like it, you're not going to want to do it, and you're going to raise your cortisol levels, and it's going to be counterproductive. And that's going really deep in the weeds. I'm not going there. But just know, target all your major muscle groups, get at least 3 solid weight training days in a week. And I do, more than that, but I'm just saying bare minimums here. And as long as you're eliciting muscle contractions, good, strong muscle contractions, slow and controlled form, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be able to maintain your muscle. If you want to get ripped and bigger, that's a whole different conversation. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. If you're able to do that, then that boosts your brain function too, because you feel better about yourself. So it's got an ancillary mood boosting effect as well. And we all know you need to be happy and you need to like what you're doing. But that is the long story from my perspective on muscle.
Yeah, I like and that was kind of a really good deep dive into kind of your training and your philosophy as well. And I like that. And I just, when you said you went hiking with a weight belt, I went up, I told you I went up,
Iron Canyon, right?
one of our steeper hikes out here in Iron Mountain with a 25-pound weight vest, and I raced up, and I don't know if it was 1.5 miles or so, and I did it in less than 20 minutes.
Wow, that's impressive.
And it's one of those things where I'm still motivated to kind of test myself. Ruth, my wife, just said, "You're crazy. Why are you doing that?" I said, "Because I can. Yeah. Because I still can." Yeah. I want to make sure that I still can every day, every month, whatever. And I also wanted to bring up the point that, I think one of the better ways to maintain your health and your glucose levels, as well as your percentage of fat. Burning fat through cardio is one thing, but you're also going to burn muscle when you do that, especially if it's excessive. One of the best ways is weight training. Weight training and building that muscle is going to burn fat. And as Kevin, you just pointed out. So I just love the fact that we're kind of focusing on muscle and just seeing how it reverberates through all of health. John, what would you have to say with respect to this whole concept of muscle, since you work with the chiropractic aspect of things, and that's sort of new to me. I have done it, but I don't know exactly kind of what's the philosophy behind it. What's the science behind it?
Well, I'll just say quickly that, in terms of my own journey, that the muscle and the strength portion has been sort of the last piece of the pie for me. And I really dove into nutrition, and I, went down this whole nutrition rabbit hole, and I was doing lots of cardio, and that all kind of changed over the last few years. I read Peter Attia's book, Outlive, and he
Yep.
talks a lot about how our muscle mass is directly correlated to our lifespan, right? And the more muscle that you have at certain ages, the more likely you are to live to certain benchmarks. And then he talks, also about a bit about strength. If you can carry your own body weight, at these ages, then that correlates directly with an increased um, percentage of living to these benchmarks. And so I got really serious about it. And what I have found in my own practice in trying to do this is actually a lot similar to what Kevin is saying. As a chiropractor, I'm very concerned about the spine and about disc heights and about things of that nature. Not only in my patients, but in myself. I have disc injuries in my neck, my mid back, and my low back. I have to be very, very cautious with the amount of weight that I load onto my body. What I have found, and we're all talking about it, so in kind of indirectly, but part of my training when in my own practice is to emphasize consistency. It has to be consistent. It does not have to be at a gym. It does not have to be lots of big weights. It doesn't have to be Olympic lifts. It doesn't have to be anything that you saw on any of the Instagram channels that you follow. Like Kevin said, you can do damn near anything you want to do with your body weight if you're smart about it, and you can learn some techniques for that. But the trick is you have to be able to do it every day. Or, like you said, 3 days a week on strength training. Great. My suggestion is you're going to walk 10,000 steps every single day. That's an everyday thing. You're going to eat well every single day. You're going to sleep well every single day. And then you're going to split up the 7 days in the week, and you're going to do 3 or 4 cardio sessions, and you're going to do 3 or 4 weight sessions. And you're going to work your body in those two different ways, but you're going to do one or the other almost every single day of that week. And that's going to translate into the month and the years. And right, you can't stop those things. So the chiropractic aspect of it comes in when you go, okay, how do I keep this feeling good? How do I keep my body wanting to do this? How do I stay motivated to put my feet down out of bed and get after it every day? And what I find, and what most chiropractors will tell you, is that if you're getting regular and consistent adjustments, that general sense of pain and lethargy that most people experience really dwindles quite a lot. Uh, there's a lot of reasons for that. Proper joint alignment and motion is probably the largest, but there's also a huge component of it that is a proper proprioceptive input to the brain. It's a neurological component. When the brain gets the information from the joints that can tell it exactly where they are in space, what direction they're moving, how fast they're moving, right? All of those different bits of information that let us map our body up here, when that information is solid and appropriate, we have this more pain-free image of ourself up here. And when those joints get stuck and stiff and locked and they're not feeding that information up to the brain, you get these blind spots and these dead spots where your brain is really not connected to that piece of your body. And that can allow the alignment and the movement to get worse. That can, right? And that can lead to other more orthopedic type of injuries and degenerative changes and that kind of thing. The stiffness increases, and suddenly you're like, God, I do not feel like doing this anymore. I'm hurting.
Huh.
And so I really do think that in keeping the joints moving well and keeping the brain aware of what's going on with the body all the time, you can keep the comfort level high. And that is a huge way to motivate people to say, yeah, I feel good enough. So why wouldn't I be out there walking? Why wouldn't I be out there lifting my weights or doing my calisthenics or whatever it is that I've chosen to be consistent with? And that's the big thing. I also want to emphasize that a lot of people view chiropractic as a palliative intervention. I wake up with a stiff neck. I go to my chiropractor. He adjusts me. My neck feels better. I go away and I don't need it again. And it's really more like exercise. It is something, right? We need consistent because we don't live a genetically congruent life. We sit, we're inside, we're breathing stale air, we're right. Even if we're doing it as well as all of us are doing it, we're still wild animals living in cages. And so we need constant checking of those joints to make sure that they're aligned and they're moving smooth and they're feeding the nervous system and the brain the information that it needs to do all of the jobs that it is responsible for. So consistently applied chiropractic, anybody can go to the chiropractor for a couple visits and feel better and be like, that was amazing. But if you'll go for a year, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about every single day. I mean, you should get to a point within a couple of months where you're going twice a month. You know what I mean? Every other week is a pretty good, consistent basis for you. But you will start to notice such improvement and even improvement in the other functions. Your sleep better, your digestion's better, I mean, everything improves when that brain just goes, I am fully on, I'm optimally activated. I have a clear picture of what's going on in every piece of my body, and now I can conduct the symphony of health that I need to from the lectern. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, Kevin, I saw you shaking your head an awful lot. Have you done any chiropractic adjustments? Have you done that?
Um, this is funny because people ask me that all the time, and I'm a huge advocate for chiropractic. I have a friend in town here. Well, it's actually Jen, my significant other. She goes to this guy in town here. Corey is his name. He's really good because he's helped her tremendously, and she goes there like once a month to get an adjustment or something. And I've sent multiple clients to this guy, and everyone comes back like, "Oh yeah, he's great." Da 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 da. And I keep sending people to him, and I've known chiropractors over the years, and I've leaned into it. I've geeked out on it multiple times in research purposes. Um, I kind of contemplated a little bit years ago about going down that tract as chiropractic as well, but I never really did. Um, so to answer your question, no, I once had a chiropractic adjustment at the gym because we had a guy upstairs that was doing. He came in and he was giving away free 5-minute assessments or whatever. And I laid on his table. He cracked my neck. He cracked my hips. He did a couple things. I was like, wow, that was cool. Just like John was saying. And it was like a flavor of the week type thing. I was like, oh, that was amazing. Luckily, knock on wood, fingers crossed, I don't feel I've needed a chiropractor because I do so much like preventative care with my body when it comes with like 3-dimensional movements and like hanging, inversion. I do hot yoga 2 to 3 times a week, which I think is absolutely amazing, I might add.
It sure is. Yeah.
And so on. And I don't feel like I need the chiropractic. And I don't mean to sound egoic when I say that. It's just a fact. But I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge backer, a big proponent. I send people to chiropractors all the time. And I like to think I don't need one. Although, I might go to Corey one of these days. Or if John happens to show up in town one day, maybe you can give me a crack or check me out or something like that. Right? And I know someone's like, I've added postural assessments before, and some people are like, oh, your shoulder is like 1/4 of an inch lower than the other, and yada. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I don't feel I need it, but I'm a huge proponent of it. Yes. Yeah. And everything. I was understanding what he was talking about with the brain connection too, because I was saying when I was answering your question about muscle, confidence is a big factor too. You have to feel confident in your body that you can ski, that you can do the activities you like outside first of all, and then secondly, your activities of daily living, the shoveling of snow, the pushing of wheelbarrows, helping your neighbor out of a ditch when they're stuck, those kind of things. And if you're hobbling around and you have a bad knee or your lower back is sore, you're gonna be timid. And just think of how unsettling life would be if you have that chronic pain or that even nagging slight pain. You just can't enjoy life. So the brain is a big part of that, and it does control everything. It's 99% mental. Everything is. Yeah, like getting up at 4:30 a.m. this morning for me to get to the gym early enough to shoot a video before my workout, that's mental. You got to want that. Right?
Sure.
And if you don't, then you've got nothing. And if your body isn't working properly and you're dealing with aches and pains, you don't have time for that stuff, especially as you're aging. So, yeah, I agree with everything he was saying.
And John, you also brought up a particular point that I think Kevin and I have kind of mentioned in our 10 commandments because it's an overarching element, and that is the consistency.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Consistency is key. It's a
It's
key
king,
motivator.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be consistent, and because Kevin, you've trained so many people over time. You know that people that want to sign up with you and you go for a training and they do 1 or 2 sessions and they drop out.
Yep. Gone. Never never to be seen or heard from again.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
and so, it kind of feeds that whole social media trend of, well, if that doesn't work, try this, or, have you tried the gym? You don't like it. Try this kind of training. And you get all this garbage out there. And that was one of the motivating things behind me starting up this, Embracing Age and Wisdom podcast and kind of expressing my experiences, is because especially when you're getting older and you're starting to feel these aches and pains, and if you haven't been physical, and they go to the internet and they see all this garbage out there, and it just is discouraging. What do I do? Who do I follow? And that's kind of what we were doing in putting these podcasts together, is kind of getting the best of the best together and really coming up with the real plan. And that plan will work. It will work if you're consistent. So I think
My
that's another
question,
key element. Yeah.
my question to patients always, they say, well, I tried this and it didn't work. And I always say, well, did you try it completely enough? And did you try it for long enough? Before
Long
I
enough, right?
ever say, let's try something else, I want to know, how much did you do it and how long did you do it? Because any experiment has a length of time, right? And
Sure,
there is
sure.
no process in the body that does not take time. And
Right.
just like you wouldn't go get a gym membership and then say in a month, I still look the same, I'm quitting, this obviously isn't working for me, right? We can't say that about many things where physiology is concerned. It turns like a cruise ship, not like an F1 car, right? It's really big, long, slow arcing curves. And
Indeed.
people have to be in it to win it in order, like you said, that mindset of, if I want to start working on my summer body, I'm doing my summer body of 2026, maybe some people 2027 if I start now. This is not
Sure.
right. Everyone loves those Instagram influencers, love to say in March, let's get
Yeah.
working on your summer body. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
too late, man.
No way. That's
You
way
needed a
too late.
much longer runway to get
Right,
there.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I think we've kind of touched on it while we're discussing both muscle and exercise and all of our different focuses in our disciplines, how much all of this affects us mentally. Again, thinking about getting older, mental acuity, your ability to stay alert, etc., in our advancing years is really important, and it's important to that health span, living longer, better. So what's your focus? What's your opinion on that, and how do you see what contributes to what the mental health aspect of longevity and health plans that you guys have experienced? What do you think is most effective for brain health?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first, John?
You go first.
Okay. I would say I lead with mental health combined with fitness, with myself, with my clients, and all the stuff that I talk about. And I'm not talking about just doing, go and get your sweat on at the gym and do, high intensity interval training for 20 minutes, or do Tabata drills because it's going to boost your brain function. And it's going to keep you mentally strong. That's part of it, but more for me is complex cross-body patterns. I can't stress those enough. My workouts are 75% cross-body patterns, I would say. That's how I train people. That is the only way I train people. I've gotten away, years ago when I first started training in my 20s. Yeah, it was 3 sets of 10 on the bench press and whatever people wanted, and I was kind of ushered around by people. But as I got older and wiser, I'm like, wait a second. I saw we'll go back to my grandparents again, and both of them ended up having strokes. They end up having dementia after the stroke because that's a secondary effect of it, what happens. And then I started researching why and how did they get a stroke? Well, like I said before, processed foods, eating late at night, lots of simple sugars in their diet, various aspects like that. A lot of amygdala and plaque was probably built up in their brain from the diet they ate, and they weren't very active either. And my grandfather had a little bit of a belly on him. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to have mental issues when I get older. I don't want Alzheimer's. I don't want dementia. I don't want a stroke. I don't want a heart attack. I don't want any of this crap. What can I do to bulletproof myself from it? And I can't stress enough the importance of mental health as you get older. That's probably the number one thing. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to have the ambition or the motivation or the inspiration to go to the gym, to go into your basement and do bodyweight exercises, to go and see John as a chiropractor. You're going to have none of that. And if your brain cells start to diminish, you know, mental decline, that's a huge problem, humongous. So how can you stop it? How can you prevent it? How can you reverse it? Cross-body patterns in my mind is number one. And then building a solid structure with your body. Doing cardio. I'm not afraid of cardio. A lot of people are. I just shot a video on this too. I was bashing all the people that say cardio is crap. It's not crap. It's absolutely and fundamentally important, but you have to balance it. The problem with cardio is don't just do cardio. Don't do 2 hours of cardio every single day, 7 days a week, which I've been seeing people at the gym doing it since I moved here in 2006. The same people doing the same cardio 7 days a week on the same machine. Nothing has changed. I'm like, 2 hours they're up there, just hucking away. Arc trainer, elliptical trainer, just jogging at a slow pace for 2 hours in a row. I'm like, that's the problem. It's the overabundance of cardio. But as a fitness module, cardio is absolutely imperative as you age, because that does help with brain function too. But if you can spice up your workouts, make them complex, where you have to really think about the movements you're doing, not sitting on a machine going like this, doing bicep curls with a linear pattern. That's nothing. That does zero for your brain. But if you're holding a dumbbell and you're standing on one foot and you're crossing over the midline of your body and you're lifting it up like this and balancing at the same time, or you go into a squat thrust on one foot and you grab one dumbbell and do a renegade row, and then you hop up and grab the other arm and do a press overhead, where you're crossing the midline of your body and you're doing complex movement, that fires up your brain like a Christmas tree. Not only does it preserve your brain cells, but I do have it on good authority to believe it improves the neuroplasticity of those brain cells and reverses the aging of the brain, reverses it. I'm 100% convinced. So that is critically important for me. And then if you keep those brain cells firing on all cylinders, you know, you can keep doing that in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and onward. And prevent all that mental decline. And then obviously stop doing the habits that are going to accelerate the brain aging process. Like people that get older, in my opinion, should just stop drinking alcohol altogether. If you're going to drink, I wouldn't do one.
Or avoids.
I wouldn't even do.
10th commandment, avoids.
Avoids. I wouldn't even believe the 1 to 2 drinks a day is healthy for you. Nonsense. I almost said a curse word. Sorry. I would say 1 to 2 drinks a week, maybe. We can let that in. But other than that, it's a waste. It sends you backwards, and it's horrible. It's definitely horrible for the brain, absolutely, for sure. And I wouldn't suggest it. So avoid all those habits that accelerate brain aging, and then absolutely start doing cross-body patterns. Start doing fasting. It doesn't even have to be aggressive fasting. It could be as minimal as like 13 hours a day of fasting, and just skip the late night eating, if nothing else. Like even eating a 12-hour window, just don't eat late at night. That's one of the biggest problems. Do you realize? I'm curious if you guys know this. If you eat right before bed, there's 1,000 things bad that goes wrong in your body. One of which is HGH drops down, insulin spikes up, pancreas tries to release insulin, but the pancreas wants to go to sleep. It doesn't want to release insulin late at night. Just like the rest of your body, your organs want to shut down. And if you eat right before bed, that doesn't happen. And here's what else doesn't happen. Your brain goes through this detox. It's like a flushing period when you're sleeping, but only if you fast for 3 to 4 hours before bed, you fully tap into that. And that actually helps reverse the aging process of the brain, and it reduces amygdala and plaque buildup in the brain. And a lot of people have no clue that this happens. No one even talks about it. I've only seen like 2 people talk about it. So what you want to do is you want to get a good 3 to 4 hours of fasting in before you go to bed, and you want to try to finish your meal as early in the evening as you can, because when that happens, you really get that washing of the brain effect. And it only happens when you fast right before bed. And these influencers, oh yeah, I follow time restricted eating, I'm doing intermittent fasting, I eat between 2 and 10. I don't eat until 2 in the afternoon, and I finish eating at 10 o'clock at night. I'm doing intermittent fasting. Look at me. Make sure to like and share my video. You're an idiot. That's what. You got to stop eating early, because you're sabotaging yourself. Even if you're eating a biodynamic organic chicken breast on a top of a salad with kale and Brussels sprouts and bean sprouts are all
Yeah,
organic.
it doesn't matter.
You're still
Doesn't
eating
matter.
late at night. Yeah, it still doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
So-
well, you even mentioned it's worse than smoking
Yeah,
in a lot of
it
ways.
is.
Do you
Eating
know?
late at night
It
is,
is.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of just general brain health, because if you don't get a good night's sleep, I mean, that reverberates all the way through. If you don't
Yep.
get a good night's sleep, you're not going to be motivated to do any kind of physical activity. You're not going to do your 10,000 steps or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And not to mention all the metabolic negative effects of eating
Yes.
late at night. That one thing, that
Yeah.
one element.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm opening this all up now to kind of wrap everything up in terms of
I'd
what
love
we've
to,
discussed.
I'd love
Yeah,
to
good.
say just,
Yeah.
kind of my take on what Kevin was just talking about there is I view the body very holistically. And I think brain health is part of physical health. And you guys have your 10 commandments. I have kind of 5 pillars. Mine's move well in strength, endurance, and flexibility. It's eat and hydrate well. It's just rest and play well. It's think and feel well. And it's avoid environmental toxicity. It's basically the same things that you guys are saying. These are the things that are universally true for all of us. I don't know anyone that is doing those things that has mental health issues. I think if
Right.
we will, right, what's good for the body is good for the brain and vice
Yes.
versa. So if
Mhm.
people will just stick to those stupid, simple, non-sexy basics,
Yes.
this is the stuff that you were programmed to expect on a genetic level in your environment every day. And that is going to keep your brain firing on all cylinders, just like it will keep you able to balance and pick yourself up off the floor and carry your groceries and swim in the ocean and all those things. So I do think that these lifestyles that we're trying to help teach people to create, that is the answer. The continuation and the consistency of all those things really will affect that brain health as well. And I'll go back to, that's the wellness side of my answer. Again, the chiropractic side of my answer is that joints that don't move have such a negative effect on your central nervous system function. And it's really largely
Interesting. Yeah.
not known. And even the people that know it, it's misunderstood because there's not a great way to study it in a real placebo clinical blinding way, right? It's very, very difficult to do a placebo trial on a chiropractic intervention because anything that you do to the body is still an intervention. You can't give a salt pill against it,
Oh,
right?
right. Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to get data around it. But what we know, the practitioners know, is that it has profound neurological implications. And so it's one of those reasons that we say that consistent chiropractic, even when somebody doesn't need it, right? In the absence of symptoms, in the absence of anything like driving me in there, but just as a continuation of a wellness lifestyle, I do think also can play a really big part in keeping that central nervous system firing well for a long time, simply because it eliminates the noise and the fuzz and the static that your brain is getting from these joints that are not quite aligned well and are not quite moving well. So that's kind of my two-tiered take on it. And that's how I coach my patients. My job is to help you protect your spine and your joints and your movement, and also teach you how to do these other things so that you can really put everything together and create a lifestyle that then you can continue until your last day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
That's really well said. As we're wrapping up, there is one other thing that kind of floated through, I think as a theme through everything we've, all three of us have been discussing here, and it's one of our 10 commandments, I'm sure. And John, I heard in your pillars this mentioned as well, and that is community, connection with others. You said play, was an important aspect, and I see play as something that you do in a community, and community for our mental well-being as we at any age, but especially as we age, is super, super important. And so just as a final discussion, what's your view of that, of connecting with others and how
Who wants to
important
go?
it is?
You want to go first or want me to go?
Go ahead, Kevin, you
Yeah,
first.
Kev.
Okay. Community is quintessentially important. When you lock yourself out from other people, from society, and you're, you know, batten down the hatches inside your house and you're just kind of doing nothing and you're not going outside, you're accelerating the aging process on a daily basis. You're taking years off your life by doing that. It's really important to have positive relationships with people, look people in the eye, shake hands, sit at a dinner table when you're at a restaurant with people and put your phone in your pocket, even if it's buzzing and you're trying to check the score of your favorite football team, sports score, or whatever. Just don't worry about it until afterward. Be present with people. Human connection is so critically important, and human touch, that it's not even funny. There are particles of positive chi and electrons that go through the air when you're engaged with someone from a metaphysical level and then from a physical level. So if you shake hands with someone and you say, hey, hi, nice to meet you, or hey, it's been a while, how you doing? Mean it. Say it and mean it, and take a personal interest in other people and put yourself second and act like the person you're talking to across from you is the best person and the greatest person in the world at all times, no matter what. Unless it's like, you know, someone with a knife and they're trying to stab you. That's a different story. We don't need to go there though. But that aspect right there ties into mental health. It helps improve your mood. It helps improve your ability to focus, to function, mental acuity, and memorization, and all these different things. And when you're locked in a house doing brainless activity or doing nothing at all, and you shut yourself out from a society, then you're going to have problems. And that was a huge issue and problem I had when COVID hit back in 2020. And it wasn't necessarily my isolation, but it was the nonsense about don't leave your house or you're going to get arrested, and like all these fear tactics everybody was using against us from the local government all the way to the top. And I don't mean to go political right here. I'm just being honest about this. I was furious with it then. I'm furious about it now that it even happened. And like the kids in school that were all at that young age, a very impressionable age, where they were forced to wear masks, forced to lock in place or shelter in place, whatever the heck they called it. That was all nonsense and garbage, and it set a bad example to those kids. And when I'd walk on a trail or ride my bike on a nice sunny day in the summer of 2020, and people be coming toward me wearing masks who would jump in the weeds and turn their back to me as I walked by, I would get very offended by that, and I was disgusted by it. And that's when I really started digging deep into the social isolation aspect of things. And I'm like, wow, this is happening right now because they're forcing us to do it. And I'm like, do you realize that people do this anyway? And they already lock themselves in place before COVID was even a thing. And I'm like, I wish I can get my hands on some statistics of people who did that and were like isolated from people, and their health span, their lifespan, the condition of their bodies, the condition of their brain, and if they were more susceptible to chronic diseases and stuff. And I guarantee the numbers would be off the charts then,
Right.
during COVID, and now as well.
Oh,
So
it's really interesting, Kev, what you just brought up, because I wanted to just jump in here real quick,
go ahead.
that COVID kind of highlighted the negative effects of
Yeah.
isolation.
Yeah.
You see it in our kids. We saw it in a lot of people's mental health decline because of that. And so it's really important that we take that understanding and that learning into our day-to-day lives today, post-COVID. You know,
Yes.
we can't be isolated like that.
Yes.
You know, and the other thing that it did is it really drove a wedge into society, and it really
Yeah.
created us's and thems.
Yes.
And you
Yep.
can see the decline of the overarching society since then, because
Yeah.
we've gotten so
Absolutely.
siloed that there are people that we're like, I will not have anything to do with those people based on the sign that's in their front yard.
Yeah.
So that just narrows then our scope of how our community, how big it can be. Right?
Yeah.
We've
Right.
now just chopped it in half
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
created all this negative. You mentioned cortisol earlier, right? We just have
Yeah.
these super negative impulses every time the other comes up, and it's gotten really, really bad. And I don't think we're done with the effects of it. I don't think we've really quite come to grips with how damaging that was.
Yeah.
And I really
Oh, yeah.
agree
Yeah.
with you that it's become worse since then. And I
Yeah.
think we can all see the sort of social decline that's happened since we isolated.
Yeah. And it's really, really important to our health that we don't have that. We need the community. And as Kevin brings up too, the physical touch is really important. It's a physiological benefit to physically touch another human being. And John, you and I know, and from our acting training, my training specifically, and what I taught you guys, what's the most important thing that an actor can do when he's face to face with another person? Listen,
Connect,
listen,
be present.
listen, connect. Exactly. Be present, not inside yourself. 95% of the people that when you get into a conversation with somebody, you're face to face with somebody, what are you doing? You're spending time not listening, but thinking, what am I going to say next? Or when can I jump in versus stop and listen? Now you're outside yourself and you're connecting with that other individual. So it's that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Just
And I
listen.
really worry about the younger generations. I mean, we all grew up in an era where it was normal to talk to people on the street and wave to your neighbors and things like that.
Right.
But these kids are growing up in a phone and in a, in video games and echo chambers that just, I am terribly worried about how the next few generations are going to be able to go out. I mean, we could say this to anybody that's, I'm 47, anyone my age and older, we say, go out and say hello to somebody today that you don't know. And they'd be like, no problem. I could do that. I used to do that kind of stuff all the time. You say that to anyone younger than me and they're gonna be like, I don't think I'm not comfortable with that. You know what I mean? So
yes. Outside my safe space.
community is going to become a much bigger component that we are going to have to teach people how to engage with.
I agree. Well, gentlemen, it's been real.
Yeah. It has been. The past hour flew by.
Sure did.
I know. I'm checking the time. Kev, I know you have a hard stop, so I wanted to make sure.
I'm good. I'm good until 2:00, so we're good.
Oh, okay, good enough. But again, thank you so much. I got to say, two of my favorite people in the world here together. John, I'm glad we have reconnected.
Yeah, definitely.
From our past. And it was, again, all the negative of social media. The positive was I found you back on social media and see what you were doing. And I said, hey, you know what? He's aligning pretty much with what I'm doing and what Kevin's doing. It's pretty cool. Let's bring this group together. Guys, again, thank you so much. And then I will take this video and then we'll talk about how I can get a copy to each of you, because I think it's going to be beneficial to anything that we're doing. I'm doing for my end of things, and then for you. And then finally, kind of cutting this off, so to speak. Kev, did you want to just briefly bring up about the retreat and where you stand with that, and possibly if John wants to be involved, because I see my input. I don't want to go into the detail. We'll meet sometime locally here, but yeah, just talk to briefly about that.
Okay, so there's this brand new gym opening right across the road from me in the Black Rock Resort, which is a high-end, beautiful facility. And John, have you ever been to Park City?
I have.
Do you know where Black Rock Resort is?
I don't know that one specifically.
It's just out of town, past the hospital on the way to Camas. Okay. Like if you go down 248 past the hospital and like the dog park and all those fields, you go through, you go under the underpass and you keep going right as if you're going to Camas, and about a half mile on your left, there's this beautiful big resort called Black Rock Resort. And I live right across the road from it. Anyway, the gym that I currently work at, and Steve, this is new information to you, I think, is called Silver Mountain Sports Club. And it is on its last leg. It's falling apart.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
Rumor has it has been bought, Steve, and the new owners are going to be closing on January. And then they have these big plans to remodel it. They're going to put like an underground parking place in the back and all these different things. This is the scuttlebutt I've been hearing. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. The bottom line is there's a 10,000 square foot brand new gym going into Black Rock. I met with the gal a couple of weeks ago. Tina is her name. She's an old friend of mine. She wants me to come over there and start training. I'm bringing my friend Scott from the gym, my friend Kimba from the gym. We're probably going to defect over to there. I don't know if we're going to fully defect 100%. It's going to be a work in progress probably, the whole 9 yards. But they have a indoor ice skating rink where this minor league team from Salt Lake City is going to transport up to here and play their games. And they have bleachers and the whole 9. And in that building, they've got the 2-story beautiful gym that's going in. Brand new equipment, the whole shebang. It's going to be it's going to be warm in there in the winter. It's going to have all these bells and whistles. They also have an event center in there, a conference room, I mean. And then they have like this private area that has like pool tables and like chairs and fancy stuff like that. And I got talking to her and I said, I'm looking for a place to do a retreat. I said, this actually looks like a great place. And her eyes just went bing like this when I said it. And she was trying to sell me like, oh my God, you got to do it here, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like it was gift wrapped to me. The universe
Yeah.
just handed that to me. And I'm like, I can't think of a better spot to do a retreat than there, because they have lodging already set up. They've got a restaurant over there, which is going to have smoothies and stuff and everything. There's a gym there. And then there's a whole ice rink where they move the rink out and to do events and stuff. They're going to have concerts over there and all kinds of crazy things. So what I'm envisioning is, because Steve and I had talked briefly about doing a retreat. I don't know how I might have been out in Ireland or something. I was texting back and forth with him. He said, we'll talk about it back. We never actually finally got to talk about it, but now is the perfect time. I want to do a retreat, and I want it to be like 2.5 days. So basically people would come in on, say, a Thursday. They would fly in on a Thursday, stay overnight on Thursday. It would start bright and early Friday morning. We would start with a workout, 600. That's when it starts.
Nice.
And we go for 10 hours. It's a workout, and then we go into the conference room, and we have modules set up. This is what we're going to learn today, blah, blah, blah. And it would be based off of our 10 commandments. It's that simple. And then we would have all day Friday, all day Saturday, half day Sunday, and then everybody goes home Sunday.
Nice. Yeah.
And then they have time to get home and everything like that. So they would have to make their plane arrangements and stuff, but we have a one-stop shop. Everything is there. And then each day we would go and we do an outreach thing. And they also have a shuttle service, I believe. So if we did a hike each day, they can shuttle the people to wherever we're going.
Cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So then we could plan like a hike or a bike ride or something along those lines. We can include it in the price. We can have a one price deal for the whole shebang minus flights in. We could research how much that would cost, how it would work. We would create an outline of what's going to be included in the day 1, day 2, day 3, that kind of deal. And it's all right there. It's like there's a gym, there's an event center on the floor, there's conference rooms where we can do like the I guess you would call it the educational part of things.
Right.
Sure,
And if
sure.
people wanted to go to the gym as well, the gym is right there on the center. And then there's none of this like scrambling around everywhere. And then when the day is over, they just walk to their room, they chill and they're out. Done.
Yeah, I love it. And we can obviously market locally as well, because people down in
Absolutely.
Salt
I'm
Lake
thinking
and
we could
all
probably
over-
get 10 people locally just alone.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And then
for sure.
and then we say how many people, what do we think our max people is? Is it 50?
Right.
Is it 30? Is it whatever? We come up with the maximum amount, and then we start thinking about who else do we want to pull in as instructors or as talkers or whatever, and that's where John could come in.
Sure.
We can figure out your piece, what you would want to do, how long you would need, and then we could factor you right in, build you right into the outline. And Friday you're going to be on from 12 to 2 or whatever it is, and you're going to talk about ABC, the importance of chiropractic, joint health, and brain function combined together, or whatever it is.
Oh, actually, everything that you discussed today, John, would fit so beautifully.
Pretty much,
as well as if you wanted to do actual sessions with people, that would be fine.
Cool.
Yeah, what's your thought, John? I know you said obviously you have to travel out here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the time commitment, Thursday to Sunday is doable. I think it would be definitely something worthwhile. It would depend obviously on specific scheduling, but barring any family conflicts or anything that I can't not do, then I would definitely love to be a part of it for sure.
And Kev, did you say we were talking about the spring, the first quarter, second quarter next year?
Yeah, I was thinking spring. The only reservation I have is, as you know, the trails don't really get cleaned up or dried up until June out here, I would say.
I know.
If we wanted to do hike, like a daily hike or something like that, but we could also keep it internal, and then we can do like, I don't know, a power yoga class in the afternoon down on the ice rink or something.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, sure.
Right? Instead of leaving, like if we did one in the spring, maybe it could just all be internal over there, and we could figure out something else to do in the afternoon.
Sure.
We can even do a shopping tour or something like that, and we can bus people down to Costco, or we can bus them over to, any one of the health food stores, and teach people how to freaking shop properly. Like that stuff is gold, in my opinion.
Right.
I've got a direct line with Good Earth over here. Well, Good Earth.
Sure. Good Earth is great. Yeah.
It's a little on the small side if we had a big group of people, but they might be open to us coming over there at a slower hour, like 1 p.m, and doing like a whole shopping tour over there. I've done that before in California with people, and they loved it. And we give them a sheet and a handout, and we go from section to section. Here's the produce section. What are you looking for here? You're looking for organic, you're looking for this, you want to avoid chemicals, pesticides, hormones, blah, 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 blah. Then we go over to the meat section, we talk about that. Then we go to the middle aisles and say, oh, stay away from the middle aisles, you're going to get fat, you're going to die, your eyes are going to burn out. I can't stand when people say that. Don't avoid the middle aisles, you just got to know what you're looking for in the middle aisles.
Right.
And we educate people on all the myths and all the bullshit they're constantly fed. And that's
right.
Like I've really gone rogue with my content now on videos. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm starting to get really animated and angry now in videos about all the influencers and the asshats. And if people tell you don't do this and don't do that, and oh, don't do cardio if you're over 40. I just did one on cardio yesterday, I think it was, and I just vented about it. I'm like, it's nonsense. What?
Sure,
Don't do cardio over 40? Why? Because some influencer told you to? Because he wants more views and likes?
Sure.
And he gives you an excuse not to do cardio and just do strength training? It's
Right.
bullshit. So
what I like about the overall concept of the retreat is it's not just about, you know, a yoga class and a workout class and so on. That there are elements of complete education, like what John just gave us an education on chiropractic, and we can talk about food and fasting and explain to them this is how you need to go about doing this stuff, and then all the myths, we dispel all of the myths. So there's a whole educational component besides an activity component. So yeah, and I think maybe this spring, even though we may not be able to do the hikes, which is, we have to consider that because it's so beautiful here to hike, you know, in the spring or in the fall too, with the colors. It's amazing. Let me end it there because I'm realizing I have a hard stop in 15 minutes, so I've got to move on. But again, guys,
but in theory, I'd love to be part of that in any way I could, for sure.
Okay,
cool.
Yeah, so we'll fold you in. Kevin and I still need to meet face to face and nail down some details on it and all. And I want to go out and see the facility as it's progressing. But yeah, again, thanks so much, guys. I will be in touch.
Thank you.
And you guys have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you
all right,
too.
You too.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, you too, John.
Take care.